This video is brought to you by Motion VFX.
Severance is about the demands that capitalism places on our everyday lives.
Severance immediately feels distinct in the midst of the crowd.
Hit show Severance, Mr. Ben Stiller!
The best moments of Severance.
Severance is one of my absolute favorite.
The show is absolutely fantastic.
New procedure called Severance.
We think this may be one of the greatest shows I've ever seen.
The most visually striking TV shows ever made.
Severance.
The show is absolutely fantastic.
The best moments of Severance.
Severance doesn't just tell a story. It quite literally cuts into your subconscious. See, most people think that video editing is just about cutting out scenes or cutting out mistakes. But Severance, it proves that editing is storytelling. Every cut feels like a wound. Every silence feels like a scream. The way that it's edited feels so different, almost surgical. And the thing is, none of it's by accident.
3 editors and 3 assistant editors, each with their own Mac. I think it was about 83 terabytes of footage.
What makes this so unique, such a work of art, is that the editors of Severance use their craft as a weapon of psychological warfare against the audience watching.
It's like it accomplishes the delivery of the line, right? You hear what he's saying, you see them sort of together conspiring and talking, but what you don't get is the feeling of them being trapped, and you start to ask yourself questions. How is he going to get out of here? Because he's surrounded by this whole band. Milchick is right there, and you start thinking about that, that's what you should be thinking about while you're watching the band.
See, what you're watching isn't just good editing, but I'm curious, what is it exactly that makes Severance's editing so good, so different, so visually and psychologically impactful? Well, let's start with something that seems pretty simple or routine. In Severance, the severed employees live in an endless loop of mundane office work. But watch how the editors create this oppression through rhythm.
Each episode's different, also different editors work with different amounts of tracks. Like during the edit of this episode, I probably had about 14 video tracks and I would say 28 audio tracks.
One of the most impactful rules and principles to keep in mind when it comes to editing: sound. 28 audio tracks. Really think about that. Most YouTube videos or projects that you work on maybe have 3 or 4, maybe a few more. But Severance's editors are building layers upon layers of sound, creating a sonic auditory prison that mirrors the visual one that the characters are in. They're using the psychology of sound to hack your brain through the art form of editing. That is some powerful stuff. And here's where it gets even more brilliant. They use this complexity to create simplicity. I mean, watch this scene where the employees are just working. Watch this.
You're breathing.
Sorry.
You sick?
Maybe. Petey was sniffling yesterday.
If you breathe on me, I'll rip your larynx out.
Wow, that went right to 10. I feel like ripping out my germ-ridden larynx would get you sicker than just me breathing on you.
Nah, endorphins.
Oh.
Now in that scene, did you notice the rhythm? It's hypnotic, it's oppressive. The cuts here, they happen at the exact moment that your brain expects them to happen, creating a metronomic pulse that kind of makes you feel trapped in the routine alongside the characters. It almost makes you emotionally claustrophobic. That feeling that's evoked is done through editing.
By being sort of like a little bit more claustrophobic in that moment, it creates more of that visceral feeling of like they're just like trapped and like I don't know where they're gonna go, and that sort of just like they're like swallowed up.
See, this is what separates editors, or better yet, story architects, story builders from editors, from button pushers. These editors aren't just assembling footage, they're quite literally rewriting the emotional experience in the timeline. They're the invisible directors. And this right here is how editing should be taught. It is how it should be done. We should call these editors narrative architects. I mean, just to crystallize this, just to really bring this point home, look at how the editors handle this music dance experience scene. It's phenomenal. On paper or in the script, it's probably written as just employees dance. But watch what the editing does.
Ben Stiller, who's directing that episode, I believe, had not told us they had outfitted disco lights in the office. And so when that switched on, that's a very real reaction from all of us.
The cuts start slow, matching the awkwardness. Then they start to accelerate, and they start to accelerate as the characters lose themselves in that moment. The editing here is quite literally what is choreographing the emotional release from oppression. But even in moments of joy, it's so powerful. I'm getting goosebumps. Even in the moments of joy in this show, the editing reminds us of the prison that the characters are in. Notice how the cuts, they always return to the sterile office environment. The rhythm that's happening never lets us fully escape this claustrophobic, underground, severed world that we're in. And now we get to the really disturbing stuff. Severance doesn't just show psychological horror. The editing is the psychological horror.
We did a lot of trial and error trying to figure out how exactly to portray this transition from outie to innie or vice versa. You had the idea of the eyes maybe rolling back, and that seemed to work, and we just eventually found it.
And there's your change in your sort of physicality.
But they didn't just figure out how to show Severance. They figured out how to genuinely make you feel severed as the audience. If we look at this scene from season 1, episode 1 of Severance, into the stark contrast in the character from the non-severed world to being in the severed world. We have a scene where he's crying in the car. And just a few moments after what we just saw with him, his normal human state in the normal world, we now see his reaction to entering the severed world. The acting here is so phenomenal. He's acting with his eyes, his face, with everything. And also the editors, this is why sound and music is so important. We see a complete shift in tone and with the music and posture and the way he carries himself. And this is how they make us feel the difference between a severed state and not being severed. Your subconscious, it feels the disruption. It's editing at the level of neural manipulation. And this isn't just fluff. I mean, this is coming from the editors themselves. I'm getting goosebumps again just thinking about this scene. Let's look at the birthing cabin scene where Mark, the main protagonist, where he talks to himself across the Severance divide. I literally cannot stop getting goosebumps while I'm telling you guys this. We're talking about this. This scene is, it's masterful. And that being said, I do want to warn you before we watch this. What you're about to watch is quite literally a masterclass in editing, in acting, and in cinematography.
It's Helly, actually. Helly. It's the person I'm in love with. Which you'd know if you'd ever taken an interest in my life. Before tonight when you need something. She's the person I'll lose if I do what you say, because you know as well as I do that her outie won't, reintegrate. Assuming that's even real. Assuming every word out of your mouth isn't a lie. What? Whoa! I'm sorry, I didn't mean to... Dude. I'm just trying to save my wife,
Okay.
But I can't abandon her. And if you help me, I won't abandon you. I promise. You know what I think? I think the second you get your wife back, you forget I ever existed. I think that I disappear along with every innie down there. What do you want from me? We are in this together. Can't you just trust me? No.
The editor is literally cutting between two versions of the same person's consciousness. But then watch the rhythm. It starts conversational and fun, upbeat even. You even are liking what you're seeing, and then it becomes increasingly frantic as the psychological pressure builds against the two characters who are the same character. What's happening here is not just cutting out dialogue here and there or fixing mistakes. He is building emotional peaks and valleys, and he's taking us on this journey, manipulating your psychological state through rhythm and pacing. It is true art. But here's where Severance transcends traditional editing and really where it becomes something unprecedented. The editing here doesn't just support the story itself as a whole, it is a character in the story. The editing is a character.
The 10 or so different pieces of this shot were done across 4 or 5 months, depending on when in the schedule we could fit it in with our specific setup of the hallway sets, because we usually keep all the hallways completely intact.
This isn't just a tracking shot, it's a manifestation of Mark's psychological state. The editing or decision not to edit in some cases literally becomes his consciousness, fragmented across time and space, or within the hallways of Severance, I guess. But look deeper at what they're doing. The cuts between different filming sessions, different setups, different months of production, they're seamlessly woven together to create one continuous psychological experience.
This is all real here, and then the second we come to right here, basically here now, this is all completely CG.
Reality and artifice seamlessly blended. Just like Severance itself, you can't tell where the person ends and where the procedure begins. Now look at the marching band sequence, where editing becomes pure psychological manipulation. I mean, this is done so well.
And Gano.
Terrified of the marching band scene, like going in. This is something they shot over 4 days, and it was just a sea of footage. I'd never cut a music video before, so it's like, we want to enjoy the marching band, but we also need to keep the story moving forward.
When we watch what happens, the editing starts by letting you enjoy the spectacle. We're in it. And then it starts to gradually tighten the noose.
There was originally actual dialogue lines in this next marching band scene where Milchik is like at the top of the vending machine trying to talk to them. It just becomes all about just chaos. And it's like the chaos and the intensity, and it's like we don't even play the sound.
No sound, just pure visual chaos. The editing has become the psychological breakdown itself.
The stripping the audio out of this scene just like has such an impact where it's like, it's not about anything that's being said. It's just a feeling.
A feeling. A feeling. That is what the editors, the story architects, create. Not just sequences of images and visuals, emotional states. Speaking of creating emotional states through visual design, the editors of Severance didn't just rely on cuts and psychology and emotion. They used motion, graphics, titles, sequences, and visual effects to build that sterile, unsettling world that we feel like we can't escape from while watching Severance. Those clean corporate interfaces, those way text appears and disappears, even the way that the Severance logo glitches. Every visual element is designed really to make you feel trapped in Lumen's corporate machine. But most of us editors or aspiring story architects, they don't have the resources that the editors of Severance had, which is exactly why I am happy to say that I've partnered with Motion VFX for this video. Because if you are inspired by Severance and if you want to create that same level of psychological impact in your own work, Motion VFX has the tools to do it. Whether you need corporate UI elements that feel dystopian like in Severance, or whether you need glitch effects that create unease, or title sequences that manipulate your audience's emotional state from the very first frame, Motion VFX has so many next level options to help editors bring their creative thoughts, their creative vision to life inside of the timeline. I am not exaggerating when I say I use Motion VFX plugins in every single one of my videos without fail. In fact, they're so good that they're even the plugins that Apple has used on some of their keynote events. Who else can really say that? And you know what? As I'm talking, I feel like there's some synergy happening here, since I just remembered Severance is an Apple TV Plus original. Just like Severance's editors became story architects, Motion VFX helps you architect every visual element, not just the cuts, but the graphics, the transitions, and effects that complete the psychological experience that you're building. So at the very least, I highly urge you after watching this video to check out Motion VFX with the link in the description below and see how it can help you bring your creative vision to life. Now, with that said, this all brings us to the final revelation. The editing of Severance doesn't just trap the characters in this world that it's created, it traps you as the viewer.
When Ben and I were working on this scene, this shot is phenomenal. Like, his performance here is amazing. It's another one similar to like him talking about Gemma during the birthing cabin scene, where it's like you kind of just want to hold on it.
They don't just hold, they manipulate time itself.
Here's the interesting thing about this. This is not Gemma. This is someone who was basically just born a few minutes earlier when she walked into the Cold Harbor room. And so the initial pass of this scene is sort of like playing the emotion on Mark and this version of Gemma equally, where it's like her being scared and like being confronted with this guy bloody saying he's her husband, but then obviously the super intense emotion of Mark seeing Gemma for the first time since she died.
They're not just cutting between characters, they're cutting between levels of reality. This is next level stuff. They're cutting between consciousness and observation, between truth and between manipulation. They literally changed the medium itself. Digital to film, present to past, reality to memory. The editing becomes time travel.
The edit process is about finding these associations, infusing ideas from one scene into the next.
If you've ever wondered what it meant to be a truly masterful creator, editor, story architect, this is what it means to be that. This is what it means to be more than just an editor, but to be a storyteller. Every cut in Severance serves multiple purposes. It advances the plot, it manipulates your psychology, it embodies the themes, it becomes a character itself. These editors aren't just cutting footage, they're building emotional architecture. They're creating psychological experiences. They're making the medium itself part of the message. So the next time you sit down to edit, ask yourself, am I just cutting out the bad parts, or am I building an emotional prison that will trap my audience in the exact psychological state that my story demands? Because, well, that's the difference between an editor and a story architect. The editing of Severance doesn't just support the story about psychological control, it is psychological control. And now that you know how it works, I'm sorry, but you can never watch it the same way again. You've been severed from your old understanding of editing to your new one. And that is why the editing in Severance is so